Hello, everyone. It's Joshua Jones with Fun and Affordable Magic the Gathering here with you for Limited Commander Series 2, Episode 1. And I'm going to be doing block restricted Commander deck techs for you. I'm going to be having one of these come out on Thursday, once per month for the whole year. So we'll have 12 of these in this series. The first block I've chosen is the Shards of Alara block, which included the Shards, Conflux, and Reborn. So all 100 cards, including the land cards, have to come from this block. There's plenty of commanders to choose from, but what I've chosen was the Jund commander. That's black, red, green, and it's Kresh leading the way for us. So for 5 total mana, we get a 3/3 that says whenever another creature is put into a graveyard from play, you may put X/1/1 counters on Kresh. So X is going to be that creature's power. This means that if your opponents have creatures go to their graveyard from play, or if you do, it doesn't matter. If a creature gets put into a graveyard from play, you put counters on our commander here. So we're going to be trying to win with commander damage or any other kind of value way we can. Here we have cards that care about mana, so 3 mana rocks here that just tap for mana, and then in the case of the sphere, we could sack it to get 2 basics to our hand. Because we're running the block restrictions, we need cards like this to help us filter whatever lands that we need early on in the game because we're running a whole bunch of basics. Here we have cards that have double value. So in the case of Elvish Visionary, it's just a 1/1, but it gets to draw us a card, so it replaces itself. And then in the case of the Elf and the Blast here, they have Cascade. So we get a Cascade into another spell that we can cast. One comes on a 3/2 hasty body, and one deals 4 points of damage. In the case of the Reflector over here, whenever we have a non-token creature come into play under our control, if we pay 2, we can get a copy until the end of the turn because then we have to sack it. What's cool about that is though we have to sack it, we do get temporary value for 2 mana, and we get to add counters to our commander equal to that card's power. Here I'm calling this the V or the 5 because all 5 of these creatures care about having creatures with power 5. In the case of the God Speaker, if we tap it, we can add green equal to the total amount of cards that we have in our hand with power 5 or greater. And then in the case of Drum Hunter, at the beginning of our end step, if we control a creature with 5 or greater, we get a draw card, plus it's just a mana dork by adding a colorless mana to our mana pool. And the Behemoth here can't be countered, and then 5 or greater creature spells we cast can't be countered. And then we have, whenever another creature with 5 or greater comes into play, we may return a target creature card from our graveyard to our hand. So a great way to recur some cards that are creatures out of our graveyard. And then with the Spear Breaker over here, we can give stuff indestructible if it's 5 or greater, and it itself is indestructible. Pretty cool little deal there. And now let's get into like kind of the strategy of the deck. So we have some cards here that create tokens for us. Dragon Fodder. We have Goblin Assault. It also is going to make our goblins attack each turn if able, but hopefully we just won't even have to worry about that because we'll have some kind of sack outlet or something like that to get rid of those goblins. That's what we're trying to do with them anyways. And then the Battle Mage over here allows us to have a player lose life, but what we're primarily using it for is to have a green 1/1 come into play every turn that it's out. And then in the Necrogenius, we have 2 and remove cards from graveyards to get 1/1s. And then we have the Thrynax, which when it dies gets us 3 1/1s. The Advantage, which if an opponent does not play creatures on their turn, we get a 2/2. And then in the Bomber's case, when we deal combat damage, we get 2 1/1s. And then in the case of Mar, we can pay 1 and tap to get a 3/1. So we just need these tokens. The Thaliad here, whenever it dies, we get a 1/1. The Broodmate Dragon comes with a 4/4 when it ETBs. And then the Brood Mother gives us one creature on each of our upkeeps, but it has Devour 2 and Flying. So Devour 2's kind of like a mechanic associated with Jund, and we'll get into it in a little bit. Bloom here allows us to remove a creature card in a graveyard to get X/1/1s, where X is the card's toughness that was removed. And then we move on to our Devour cards, like I said. So Devour is associated with the Jund. And what it is when it ETBs, you can sacrifice any number of creatures that you want, and then you put counters on these devour creatures equal to the amount that you decided to sacrifice that way, and then you get the devour number. So in the case of the slime here, it has flash, and it's a 2/2 with devour 1, so it means that you can sacrifice however many creatures you want, and then you get one counter for each one of those. What's cool about this spell is that with flash we can have 3 mana up, swing with our commander, say as like a 4/4 or something like that, and then if they don't block, we can flash this guy in and like devour like 6 creatures or something, and then all of a sudden we hit with 10 commander damage, and we're left with an 8/8 on the field, and then our commander, of course, is pretty cool. Here we have Devour 2, so that means that we're going to get twice that many 1/1 counters equal to however many creatures we decide to sacrifice, plus we can give it trample for our green. And then we have Devour 1 again, so we can have this have flying as long as it devoured a creature, and also trample as long as it devoured a creature. And then we have the Elder here, which is just a 1/1, but it has Devour 3. So the cool part about that is that if you devour 3 different creatures, then you're going to actually get 9 total counters on this thing. So it's a 10/10 for 3 in that case. And then we have the Worm here, we have the Helion, we have the Milecloth, and we have the Chomper. The Chomper allows us to gain 2 life at Devour 2, and then the Milecloth allows us at the beginning of our upkeep to create 1/1s equal to the amount of counters on it. And then the Helion here deals 3 damage to each creature, and then just a straight up devour guy with 5/5. And here we have the Dragon, so this one's pretty known for goblin decks, but when it ETBs, it deals damage to creature or player equal to twice the number of goblins it devoured, but it can just devour whatever it wants for the devour 1 thing. And then when the Skull Mulcher comes into play, you get to draw cards for each creature it devoured. And then the Dragon has Flying and Haste with Devour 2, and the Tarfiend has target player discard a card for each creature it devoured. And that's the Devour mechanic. Here we have our removal, so we just run a Dark Temper, Thoktar, Fleshbag Marauder, and Soul's Fire. So Soul's Fire is going to be like kind of like a fight effect, but it's a one-way fight. And then Dark Temper, we're going to surely control black permanent, so because we're going to have a swamp, hopefully, and then that's just going to destroy a creature. And then the Thoktar is a board wipe for 1 toughness creatures, but also it just gets bigger every single time another creature dies. Really good spell there. And then, of course, an Edict effect and Fleshbag Marauder. Here we have the Apocalypse Hydra, Lava Launch, Banefire, and Flame Blast Dragon. So all kind of like a X-costed or X-utility type of removal spells. And here we have Bone Splinters, which is going to, we have to sacrifice a creature, but again, that pumps up our commander to destroy a creature, which is going to pump up our commander. And then Violent Ultimatum, because this was like a whole cycle on the shards, and this is the one for John. You get to destroy 3 permanents, but at a pretty expensive cost there at 7 with a bunch of different mana requirements, but how are you not going to include it in a block restricted commander deck? And then Terminate was in the set, and so was Executional's Capsule. And here we have 3 sacrifice effects, so if the Devour's not getting it done, we could use these 3 spells right here to make sure that we can sack creatures whenever we want to get our commander bumped up. And then we run some utility spells, so we have Jund Charm, because we're a Jund deck, Soul's Mastery for a little bit of extra card draw, and then Dragon's Herald lets us get Hellkite Overlord straight into play, which is an 8/8 beater. And then we have some player damage spells in the Mage Slayer, which is going to deal damage equal to its power to defending player whenever the creature attacks. Vicious Shadows, which whenever a creature is put into a graveyard from play, Vicious Shadows deals damage to target player equal to the number of cards in that player's hand. And then the Spike here, which has Death Touch, And whenever it deals combat damage to a player, that player loses half of their life rounded up. I'm running 40 lands in this deck because you don't want to mess around with these kind of restrictions and not being able to get your lands. You just would rather flood out and play than not flood out and have a bunch of stuff in your hands with these kind of block restricted decks. 12 forest, 8 swamps, and 16 mountains, along with these 4 utility lands here. And that's going to do it for Kresh the Bloodbraided, the first of our block restricted commander decks from Shards of Alara. This deck is number 874340 on MTG Goldfish, and you can get this deck for $40 on TCG Player. It's a fun deck. If your playgroup plays block restricted decks together, they end up being equally power matched, and they're not too harsh on the wallet to try out. So I challenge you to try these decks, and I'll be releasing a new block restricted deck the first Thursday of next month. So be on the lookout for it, as this is a 12-part series. Like the video if you liked it, share and subscribe at your leisure. I'm Joshua Jones with Fun and Affordable Magic the Gathering. I hope you enjoyed this Commander deck tech, and I hope you get some good games in this year. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.